Hey again, this is Randy Hentz with New Kent Robotics, head coach for Team 16537, Logic Coyote. Received another email from our friends at FTC 3668 Smokey Jr. This email stated, I was working on our autonomous program yesterday and it worked flawlessly, but with really just minor details being off. I wanted to ask if there's a way to clean up the code or structure it a bit differently. So here the programmer is not having any problem with his code, but he's just wondering, hey, can I be more efficient? And there's just something that makes more sense. So I love to answer this type of question. This is awesome. So let's dig in and look at the code. Here is the autonomous program that he provided me with. Now, looking at this code, the first thing I'm going to notice is right here, we've got a nice little thing called a comment. Comments are awesome because it gives us a way to state in English what the next section of code is going to do. So he's saying here, I'm going to drive forward. And he sets his motors to 60% and then goes to sleep for 1.8 seconds. What he's basically doing is he's running these motors at 60% for that length of time before he does the next step, which is stop the motors. But this is what I'm noticing here. There's no comment all the way down. So what I'd like to see first off is some more comments. So this stops the motor. Here I am what? Closing clamps to grab the stone. And onward and onward. I'd like to see more comments. In fact, I'd actually take it a bit of a step further, or actually what I'm going to suggest is let's start sooner. So what do I mean by start sooner? Well, what I should be doing up front is deciding what I'm going to do. I'm going to drive forward. I'm going to grab a stone. I'm going to turn. I'm going to drive forward under the bridge. I'm going to release the stone. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm actually writing in English the steps that I want the program to do. And this may not be complete. Like my guess is after I grab the stone, I really need to back up a little bit before I do my turn, etc., etc. But what this has done is I've started, before I've written any actual Java code, I've written in English what I expect to do. And now this becomes my documentation as I add the code. So I add the code here for driving forward. I'll add the code here for grabbing a stone. And etc., etc. Now, of course, I don't have my stop in here. But you start to get the idea. If I start with my English statements beforehand, that will then turn into my documentation. But I've got to be diligent as I'm adding more steps. So, like I said, drive forward. Whoops, I forgot to stop. So I could just come here and say, yeah, I need to stop, and set my motors to 0. But as a good programmer, I'm going to document the code that I just added as well. So that's kind of suggestion number one there is let's document our code. It makes it easier when I'm going through this code right here and I'm saying, okay, where did I back underneath the bridge and turn? Because I need to go forward a little bit further to grab that second stone. And I'm trying to find that code in here based upon here I'm doing that, here I'm doing this, here I'm doing something else. And I can't find the exact code I'm looking for quickly and easily. If it's documented and it says what I'm doing at each step, it's easier to find and then say, here's where I'm turning and I'm not quite turning far enough. I need to increase my time on my turn just a little bit. Let me change it from 500 to 550. Okay, so to easily identify where I'm at and what's going on, documentation is going to be key. But now documentation would only be part of it. What I'd actually like to see is a concept that is called encapsulation, or writing functions that will allow me to do the same steps over and over again with less code. For instance, this drive forward at 0.6 or 60%. I see that code here. Scrolling down, I see that code here. I thought I saw it at least 3 places. Where was the other place? Well, regardless, I'm seeing it at least 2 times. And here I'm driving forward for 20 seconds. Here I'm driving forward for, I'm sorry, that was 2 seconds. This is 1.8 seconds. So what can I do to encapsulate? Well, the first thing to do would be, can I just encapsulate this so that instead of typing all of that, I just have move forward. And what would that look like if I had a program that said move forward? So I've actually got one down here that I'm going to delete for the time being. And let's just write, we're going to type in private. So private is a scope declaration that declares to what other programs or classes have the ability to access whatever it is I'm getting ready to add here. So I'm going to add a private void. Void is the return type. I'm not returning anything. Move forward. And then I add a set of brackets. Now I have defined a function called move forward. In fact, you saw up here when I had move forward up top, and I'm going to comment this one out. When I had move forward up here, it was red. Now it's not red any longer. That's because this is now a valid statement. I have defined a function down here. It doesn't do anything, but I can call it. But if I now take these 2 statements out and put them here, I now can say move forward means run my 2 motors at 60%. So anywhere where I'm moving my 2 motors at 60%, I can say move forward. And here was the other one. For some reason I had already, well, I do know why, but we'll get to that in a second. I had already taken that out. And we'll add a sleep after that one for 2 seconds. And then, where was the other one? Here's the other one. Move forward. Now, the one thing that you'll see, I'm still leaving the sleep statement out here. I think that in itself is something that we can move inside of our function. If I'm always moving forward for a certain amount of time, maybe I can just move this sleep statement into this function. Now, if you're thinking about it, you're like, wait a minute, up here your sleep was 1800, here your sleep was 2000. Here I'm going to sleep for, or I'm moving forward for 1.8 seconds. Here I'm moving forward for 2 seconds. Yes, we need to address that. How can I then call move forward and have the amount of time that I'm moving forward, the sleep that would normally come after, be a variable? I actually send that variable as a parameter to my function. So the first thing I need to do is set up my function here to accept that variable or that parameter. So I'm going to define it as an int, which means integer, and I'm going to just give it the same name. Milliseconds, which is the name that sleep currently takes. So now if I pass this parameter here, now, and I could have named it something else. I could have named it time, in which case I'd just type in time here, and then I'm saying send me the time, and that's the amount of time I will sleep for. So either one is fine. I like actually making it milliseconds. That keeps it consistent with what sleep was expecting, and it's more descriptive, because now I know not only is this time, but I know what the units are for this time just by looking at the name of this parameter. So now I'd come here and say move forward 1800, and then I get rid of my sleep afterwards. Here I could say move forward 2000, and then I'd move forward for 2 seconds, and here again move forward 2000. So you see what I'm doing is I'm setting myself up for having a more compact program up here, and I'm making it easier for myself to make changes down the road. Here I would probably want to add a stop motors. I don't have this written, but I would write one that actually was the combination of these two statements. Here I'd probably have a close clamps or something similar. So that would close both the right clamp and the left, right and left clamps. And since this sleep here is not going to be variable, is my guess that this sleep is just an amount of time to let my servos do their work. I probably will not do a closed clamp 700 here. I probably will just leave it as closed clamps, and that will keep all three of these in place. Then I would end up with a go backwards. Go backwards would probably, or move backwards, let's say. Move backwards would probably have a time, milliseconds, parameter sent, because I do want to be able to move backwards later on in the program at different times. Move backwards, this is for 0.83 seconds. Maybe at another time I need to move backwards for 1.3 seconds, something like that. So what are we looking at here? Encapsulation will allow me to one, use the same code over and over again without having to rewrite it, and two, ends up becoming almost self-documenting. I can look at stop motors and I know what it's doing. I can look at closed clamps and I know what it's doing. So while you may end up with some documentation in here, because it might be a move backwards completely under the bridge, I might actually still have documentation that states why I'm doing the move backwards at that point in time. Again, that will help me identify, especially when I end up with these 12, 15, 20 different steps out here. I don't just have a move forward sitting out here in the middle and I'm trying to figure out why am I moving forward here. I've actually documented why I'm moving forward. I've placed the second stone, and now I need to turn to park under the bridge. Something of that nature. We're at 15 minutes here already, so I'm going to go ahead and close it off now. Hopefully that helps the team structure their code a little bit better, and hopefully some other programs find this as useful information as well. And thank you for watching.